What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Great show today. We got Dillon Graff, who is just a total Badgers soup head and a bastion of Badgers content and knowledge. He's joining the show. We're going to talk basketball. We haven't talked enough basketball because we've had a ton of football stuff going on, but the season's coming up. It's really exciting. A bunch of new players. We're going to chop it up on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I am Ryan Herrings, your host. I am so grateful for everybody tuning in, listening, supporting the show. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the official college recruiting sponsor across the LinkedIn College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions to apply. And as mentioned, we're going to get right into it. We got Dillon Graff coming on, managing editor at badgernotes.com, part of the Full Ride Network. And he does a bunch of other stuff too. We're definitely going to give him the opportunity to talk about it. And one of the things I always talk about on this show is building the community. And I always want to do whatever we can do to promote smarter voices. I think we're all better off getting more intelligent voices out there. Dillon is definitely one of those people. He's really, really insightful. I subscribe to him. I think all y'all need to go check out Badger Notes. You're going to find great coverage, but also articles that go deeper, like film study on basketball players. I just saw you guys release some content on some of the stuff Bobby Ingram did differently on the football side, film clips. Like, subscribe to him. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to be a smarter Badger fan because you do. Dillon, thanks for jumping on the show as always, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate all the kind words.
It's all true. It's all true. All right, let's get into it. So you and I are both kind of hoop heads, which we talk a ton of football because it's football season. Football's the big money sport. Paul Chris just got fired. What? We haven't even talked about that.
Right.
But the season's about to start. We got to get into some basketball talk. So I wanted to start here. Just discuss some of the new roster changes, like the players that are gone, new players that are coming on the roster, and kind of what they bring and what we've lost. And I want to go a little deeper than just the surface level, because everywhere you see, Johnny Davis is gone. It's a lot of points. It's a lot more than points with Johnny Davis. So let's start there. Outside of the 19.7 points per game we're missing with Johnny, what are we really missing here?
I mean, what we're really going to be missing the most is a guy who was able to cover up a lot of warts for the Badgers last season. I mean, not to take anything away from them, but they were sub 300 in three-point shooting. They were sub 200 in two-point shooting, but they were able to mitigate that and kind of wipe that away with his ability to, stay in attack mode, get to the free throw line. That's where they were able to, kind of create or pick up a lot there where they were kind of lacking for the most part, and just his ability to draw defenders, get him the ball in the wing, let him be an ancillary, creator for the offense, something that the Badgers haven't had in a long time. They were able to kind of morph the offense around him, and they're going to kind of have to transition back a little bit without him.
Yeah, I want to pick up on something you said there. Kind of that secondary playmaker, his usage rate last year was 32.5%, which for those who may not know what usage rate means, it's essentially the amount of plays you're involved in offensively is the quick way to say it. 35% or 32% is second in the Big Ten, 18th nationally. It essentially means he's involved on about a third of the offensive plays. It's a tremendous workload.
That's the highest ever from a non-big man in the Greg Gard era, and more specifically Ethan Happ. Yeah,
it's a tremendous amount. And what I think people overlook a little bit, and I think you were hitting on it, and I think the usage rate hits on it, is it's not just the 19.7 points per game. It's the fact that defenses geared their attack towards him. They doubled him on pick and rolls. They blitzed him. They had the best perimeter defender at all times guarding Johnny Davis, right? So all of that stuff now shifts around. It's like if you have an ace in baseball, right? Now the ace is gone, so your number two guy has to be your ace, and your number three guy is now your number two. Now, everything's harder now for Chucky Hepburn, for Tyler Wahl, because they're not going to have the spacing and the gravity that Johnny Davis provided.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything changes right now. Chucky has to assume a lot more of that playmaking role and, getting to the bucket when things break down. However, we have a lot of pieces around that I think are all going to kind of, help carry some of that weight. Crowl's added a lot of size. He's somebody who is going to be – they're going to make an effort to touch the post. I mean, that – between he and Wahl down there, I mean, you got two guys that you're going to be able to play inside out with, and then you got Max Klesmit, who, in my opinion, is the fourth starter that we can confidently say and he's going to be able to, get his shot off beyond the arc, create a little bit out there. Those 4 guys are going to be able to carry a lot of the offensive weight, and it's going to kind of be evenly distributed, probably early on.
The other thing I want to talk about too, and this is going into kind of Brad Davison, who we're going to talk about next. Between Davison and Johnny Davis, you're talking about half of the team's free throw attempts. So you mentioned Crowl being stronger, having to hit the post. Like, free throws are really one of the more efficient ways to score in basketball if you're a good free throw shooting team. And we're losing a ton of it with these 2 guys. If we might as well transition into Brad Davison also going. What else are we missing with Brad Davison besides kind of maybe it is the leadership?
I mean, obviously leadership's number 1, but I mean that toughness and his ability to kind of match up against anybody on the wing, regardless of what size they are, and know that he is going to be able to give them fits. And I do think that Max Klesmit is going to make up for 85% of that right out the gate. And maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. We just have to wait and see. But he's a hard-nosed defender. He's gritty. He gets after it. He's going to replace a lot of that from like a physicality standpoint. Offensively, I mean, I think he does a lot of the same things well. He doesn't have quite as much size as Brad did. It's not as thick, not quite as tall, but he's going to be able to replace a lot of those things. With Brad, it's just everything else. He was one of a kind. He's somebody that, I would imagine Greg Gard would go to bat for any day of the week.
Yeah, for sure. And 2 your best perimeter defenders, right? Like Johnny Davis was obviously your point of attack defender. Brad Davison, you're probably your best team defender outside of maybe Tyler Wahl. I mean, that's just two-way players that you're missing that
absolutely.
Got to the line, that hit threes. All right, let's move on to Chris Vogt, who, obviously Lauren Bowman's another one, but his impact was pretty minimal, and just because he was kind of in and out. Chris Vogt was an interesting case study as a guy who played every game and really just provided rock solid backup 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think Chris Vogt is going to be sorely missed, and I got to include myself in this, thought that Wisconsin would be able to go out and get another Chris Vogt, and I think I kind of took for granted how tough of a sell that was, how unique of a opportunity he was to come to Wisconsin and fill that role. I mean, he came in and rebounded and played defense at a terrific clip, gave the team about 15 minutes a night, let Crowl develop. I mean, matched up well against some of the Big Ten's best big men. He was just kind of a unicorn, it turns out, and I think that Greg would tell you the same. He was a little bit too picky in the portal early on, kind of floated. There were a few names that were discussed potentially coming on campus that kind of fell apart just because ultimately they entered the portal for a bigger role. Wisconsin wasn't offering that. Mm-hmm. And, here we sit with 1 open scholarship and no true replacement for him from the portal, and that leaves us with Chris Hodges. And I think that throws up quite a few question marks. Yeah, that's probably one of the most noticeable. I don't want to say drop-offs because that might not be fair, but that's one of the most noticeable holes, from the outside looking in.
Well, it's definitely a question, but I think your point is dead on. And I did this too as a fan, right? You got to get somebody. Well, it is tough to sell, hey, come transfer to our program and be the backup 5 and play 17 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're a recruit and develop program, and we want to remain that way for the most part. And so we aren't, in most cases, offering what a lot of people are looking for. That's why we were fortunate enough to hit on 2 in-state kids, in the transfer portal this year. But I think, their in-state ties were significant.
Yep, and we're going to get into those next. So we're going to jump into some of the new players now. So that's kind of the players gone. Let's start with Max Klesmit, who I think is probably the highest impact new player on the roster. Transfer out of Wofford, averaged 14.9 points per game last year, 34% shooting from 3. What you did a really good breakdown on his game on your site, Badger Notes. What is Klesmit bringing in? How close? You already kind of hit on it, but how close is he to a Brad Davison type of player?
I think that he's going to be able to give you, like I said, 85% of what Brad was. He's a 4 or 5 tool shooter. He can do it on the move. He can do it coming off a screen, pin downs. He can create his own shot. He has the ability to create space on his own. But his 3-point shooting is going to be huge for this team, as they're going to need, another option as a scorer. I think he comes in and gives them, somewhere 8-10 points potentially. I think he's going to be a huge impact player. Defensively, he's tough. He's a hard-nosed player. I think he fits into a role that, Coach Gard loves. He's all about those kinds of players. I think he's just a perfect fit. And to get him with 2 years of experience under his belt, and potentially 3 years to play is just that was a home run.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I was talking to this was Jason Jordan, the Sports Illustrated recruiting director, and we talked about Klesmit, we talked about Kamari McGee, who we're going to talk about next. And he mentioned he actually used a different baseball terminology for Klesmit. He said Klesmit's like hitting a double. And only in the sense that you know he's coming in to play a certain role. He's not going to be disgruntled, and he's going to be that guy who's going to hit some threes, open the court up, but not disrupt the locker room, right? He's not coming in to get 20 shots.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting idea that you can still find culture fits in the
Yeah, 100%. I think he's a perfect fit for what they were missing without hindering, any development from their big three that's returning.
What about, the other thing that I think that's really interesting and is important when we talk about shooting, because this team shot really poorly last year. And quite frankly, Brad Davison might have been the best shooter and he's gone. I mean, at least in volume. Klesmit is a guy who shot 34%, but he shot 34% on 6.5 attempts per game. So it's so much more valuable to shoot 35% with 6 or 7 attempts than 40% with 1 or 2, right? If you can shoot 35% with volume, and that's what Klesmit's bringing to this offense, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and you have to remember at Wofford, I was able to watch a handful of games back, and he was one of their top 2 options that got keyed on all the time. He's going to be seeing a little bit less attention. He's not going to be the number 1 guy that's being game planned for. I mean, he's got Chucky, he's got Tyler, he's got Crowl. Take some of that weight off of him. I think he's going to get more clean looks this year. Mm-hmm. Moving to the Big Ten, obviously he's going to be playing a little bit more size, going to be being defended by bigger guards, bigger wings, but I think his opportunities are going to be a lot more fruitful.
Yeah, that's a great point because he's going to be a 4th option, 5th option at times, so that's a really good point as well. Let's talk about Kamari McGee, talking about guys, because that's a great segue into a guy who was a focal point, who's going to be coming into a spot that he's certainly not the focal point going to be at Wisconsin.
No, Kamari is a guy who UW Green Bay had to figure out how to utilize right away. They were just an absolute mess. And he started the year off the pine. He ended up coming in, starting for them, ended up becoming their focal point offensively, and was an incredibly high usage player. Where I think he gained a lot of experience was just, trial and error. Everything about that offense went about as miserably as it could. His teammates were giving him nothing. There was nothing in the pick and roll. There was terrible spacing. Green Bay was one of the worst 3-point shooting teams. So it was just kind of the perfect storm, but he grew as the year went on, and he continued to get better. And while if you would have told me last year that he'd have been playing in the Big Ten the following year, I would have thought that was a little bit of a reach. However, the fact that it's at Wisconsin makes it an almost ideal fit because he's kind of a Chucky Hepburn light in terms of what he does well. And he's just a guy who, more than almost anybody I've been able to cover, is willing to just accept a role and give everything he can to the team. And so he, from a culture standpoint, was just a perfect fit, come in to be the backup point guard, accept his role. And I can tell you that guy is incredibly coachable. He's just going to be a good locker room fit, going to be a good fit for the team, solid point guard.
And let me ask you this, because I love everything you're saying here. I also want to add that I feel like not only is he coming in, and he was a freshman last year, correct? He was a true freshman?
Yep, true freshman.
And averaged 11.6 per game at UW Green Bay. He shot pretty poorly. But again, you mentioned the whole offense was broken. It's really hard to judge a ton from that. What I would say is I think he gives Wisconsin a dynamic that they don't normally have with a smaller, quicker, more dynamic point guard that can break people down, that can stay with shiftier guards a little bit. I think he brings something different.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a spark plug really on both ends of the floor. I mean, Chucky played 30 minutes a game last year. Odds are he's going to play something very similar again, if not a little more. So Kamari's going to have very narrow windows to come in and give 100%. I mean, I'm not comparing him as the same player, but more so just comparing the role as to like Zach Showalter early in his career, where he comes out there and he is just playing, he's just bringing it all the entire time. You're getting the most out of those minutes, and he's playing for his teammates. Kamari's very selfless. He's also not afraid to look for a shot. I think he could be a little bit of a spark plug in those 8 minutes offensively. He's going to give it all on the defensive end. I think Badger fans are going to love him.
Let me ask you this, final on Kamari. Are we going to see any Kamari Hepburn minutes together? I know that's a smaller backcourt.
I think they're going to definitely toy with it early on, especially in like non-conference play when they're playing a little bit smaller teams. They have to find out if it can work. I don't think we see much of it. There's a lot of guys pushing for minutes on the wing that have size, and I just don't think that Kamari and Chucky's games complement each other all that well. I think they just do too many of the same things. I don't think that we're going to consistently see them on the floor at the same time.
Yeah, you're probably right. I always have this thought that you could have two playmakers on the court kind of running pick and rolls off of each other, utilizing each other. But to do that, they both have to shoot well. Kamari didn't shoot well last year. And that backcourt does have some size limitations. Like you can't play a big backcourt with Kamari and Hepburn on the floor at the same time. You just get eaten up.
Right.
Let's finish off here with the new, I would say the new impact players. Then let's get into we'll take a break. Then we'll get into some rotation questions.
Okay.
Connor Essegian. And by the way, the Locked On Badgers podcast has been an Essegian truther for a long time.
Absolutely have. Well documented. His film, the problem, here's the problem I have with this. I think people like him, kind of Midwestern shooting guards get typecast as a certain type. A high three-star Midwestern shooting guard. College are going to be not athletic enough, spot-up shooter. He's got so much more in his bag than just a spot-up shooter. I love his game. I think he can get buckets. Absolutely. I 100% agree. And, I definitely didn't anticipate him to be able to be this advanced, but I think that this kind of it has to do with the trip to France. I mean, the Badgers got those extra practices, got that extra game action, and he got worked in and he made an impact right away. And he showed them that he can play at that level. And really, it's just going to come down to, can he follow the defensive rules? Can he make an impact on that end of the floor? And if the answer is yes, with his size and his ability to shoot, he is the purest shooter we have had in a long time, in my opinion. There are going to be minutes available for him in some capacity. I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Does he just have to be average defensively? Like, in your opinion, like if he's just okay defensively, is he playing major minutes this year?
I mean, major, I think, is relative, but
sure.
There's double-digit minutes available for him, I think, if yes, he plays average defense.
Yeah, I'd agree. I love it. I love more people are coming around on the Essegian bandwagon here. I love it. I think his game is so smooth. And no matter what happens this year, I think 2 or 3 years down the road, like he's going to be one of the upper echelon wing scorers in the Big Ten, in my opinion.
I agree. I don't like to throw player comps around like this because I don't think that he projects this well, but like he's got like some Tyler Herro to him, just the pure shooter who can get his shot off in a lot of different ways in the mid-range, create space. It's so fluid, and I'm just incredibly excited about his future.
Same. I love it. All right, coming up, we're going to keep Dillon on the show as long as possible because we all get smarter when he's here. We're going to talk some of the rotation questions. How do we see maybe shooting guards, small forward, power forward, center playing out? How deep will the rotation go? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available and the right people for your team, faster and for free. And LinkedIn is something I've used in my career, in my IT job. It's helped me get jobs. It's helped me get interviews. It's helped me network with the right people. It has simple tools, screening questions that make it easier for you as the hirer to focus on the right candidates with the right skill sets, the right experience. You can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview, who you'd like to hire. And it's easier on the people getting jobs because then they're not interviewing for jobs that they really shouldn't be involved in the first place. It makes it win-win on both sides. And it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. I want to thank everyone again for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day, one of your first listens. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in, supporting the show. We're going to bring Dillon Graff back on. Dillon, before we get into this, I absolutely want to give you an opportunity to, where can people find your work? And as I said before, like your work is awesome and it's insightful. So we definitely want people to get into it.
I appreciate that. I'm over at the Badgers Wire for USA Today. That's where I do most of my writing. I have a Badger Notes Substack that I would love for people to subscribe to. I do a little bit more basketball, but I also cover football there as well. And about a month and a half ago, started a venture with Anthony Wright, joined the Full Ride Network, creating BadgerNotes.com. And for anyone who has followed my work over the years, Badger Notes started as a place for me to anonymously write about basketball and just give my thoughts. And now with this Badger Notes site, the idea is that anyone who wants to write, this is your opportunity to start. If you want to write about the Badgers, come to me, reach out to me, DM me, email me, whatever. I will help you, whatever you want. I'll give you the platform. All of our work at badgernotes.com is picked up by Bleacher Report as of this past week. So everything, as soon as we hit publish, it syndicates to Bleacher Report. I want to give people a voice, one that I didn't know how to have early on. And so anyone who's listening to this and is interested, please reach out.
I love it. And we're going to post all the contact details in our Discord, which Dillon is a part of, as well as on our Twitter. And it's the same mission statement we have, build up the Badger community and elevate more voices, because we're better when more voices are involved. And it's 100% what we're about as well. So Dillon's awesome. We're going to put all that contact stuff out there. Highly, highly encourage you guys to check it out. Let's keep going here. I just want to run through the rotation quick and get your thoughts on this. Some of these we don't need to talk about long, because I think we know where we're at, but some of them are more interesting to me. Point guard, you obviously have Chucky Hepburn. Oh, we talked about it a little bit, and let's just spend a minute there, because Hepburn has to make maybe the biggest jump on this team.
I think he absolutely has to if we're going to compete in the Big Ten. He's got to, and nobody's expecting a Johnny Davis leap, nothing like that. But I mean, to elevate from that 7-8 points a game to 12 plus, I think would be significant, because we got more than enough flashes of what he can do, what he can be, and I'm very excited to see him take that leap.
I think he is such a steady player. I think every game going in that you're going to get a solid performance. I am a little curious with the last year in terms of being a playmaker. Now, it was a tough. I thought at times it was a tough spot, because the offense was so geared around Johnny Davis. We were really putting him in iso ball. Davis was making secondary passes, and at points Hepburn was more of just a spot up shooter. We weren't running as much offense through him. I think he can be a better facilitator
for sure.
But I'm curious where you're at with his passing ability, because his assist to turnover ratio last year was about 2.5 to 1.5. It wasn't great. I think he's better than that, but I'm curious where you're at.
Yeah, and I know that as Wisconsin fans, we love the assist turnover ratio. I think it was a little bit less relevant with him specifically, because if you look at how many turnovers he had, it was so minuscule given the amount of minutes that he played. The ball just wasn't. Wisconsin's offense has never really correlated with huge assist numbers as it is, because the ball doesn't stick for very long, and it's a lot of spacing out. The ball's got to rotate, moving around. It's just never been an offense that was going to get a lot of assists. However, last year, maybe even less so, because he was used to just truly initiate the offense and then act as a little bit more of a spot up shooter, or off a miss, push it, which he was incredible at. I think he was the sole reason they were able to pick up the pace last year. He was so calm and steady, but I do think this year we're going to see he is a terrific passer. He's got incredible court vision. I think that'll be on full display. He is, as a point guard, this is very cliche, but he makes everyone around him better, and it's true.
Agreed. Yeah, I think he's an upper echelon Big Ten point guard, and I think he's right in that sweet spot for a Badgers team where he's going to probably be there for a couple of years.
He's a 4-year guy.
And just continue to get better and continue to be a thorn in people's sides. Now we talked about Kamari. McGee's backing him up. To me, that's the point guard spot.
I think it's pretty cut and dry.
Let's go shooting guard here. I think we both think Klesmit is the starter. But behind him, you have Essegian, who we've talked about, Isaac Lindsey, who is in a walking boot, but he's interesting. And then you have Jordan Davis, who could bounce between the 2 and the 3. How do you see kind of that rotation playing out?
I think it's going to be early on a lot of guys till someone separates themselves, but I do think Klesmit starts. I think right now at the 2, I think you're going to see Essegian earn minutes. And then I think pretty much the 2s and 3s are going to be fairly interchangeable this year. Like, we don't have really a true 3, if you want to call it that. But between those 2 and then add in Jordan Davis and Jacoby Neath, I think they're both definitely going to have roles, significant roles in some capacity, whether or not they're starting or off the bench. I think those 4 guys are going to be used like really interchangeably. Lindsey, I think, might have had an opportunity to really push for time, but even just the small window of missed practices is enough for Essegian to get that opportunity, and might kind of keep him on the outside looking in.
Yeah, which of those guys is most interesting to you? From Lindsey, you mentioned, but he's kind of dinged up. But is it Neath? Is it Davis?
I'm definitely most interested to see how Jordan Davis specifically comes along. I mean, the guy passes the eye test as a shooter. It's just a beautiful looking jump shot. And I think part of it was last year he was slotted into an impossible role where he would get 6 minutes a game, never consecutively. And he was expected to be instant offense whenever the team was struggling. And so he had to pull the trigger when he had an open look. And if it didn't fall, he got yanked. And so he's really put in a tough spot. The shooting splits are not good, but again, impossible position, in my opinion. As a shooter, I think he's going to be more of a volume shooter, but definitely excited to see what he can bring. I know that he was working down in Miami, trying to improve his game as more of like a playmaker and be able to put it on the deck a little bit more. So he's somebody who I would love to see take a huge step and claim, one of the major roles. I think the offense as a whole will be better for it. And Jacoby, if he can stay healthy, is someone who I think just gives them a little bit of everything and could be a really solid role player for them because they're going to be playing positionless basketball this year. I mean, again, depending on who they're playing, he can slot in and play 2, maybe even 3 spots. They've talked about even last year, he was kind of an emergency 4 at times. So he's somebody who excites me just because he is so athletic, and we didn't get to see that. He wasn't healthy last year. So he might be able to offer something as well.
On those two players, so Jordan Davis is interesting to me in the sense of, to your point, he didn't shoot really well. I think it was 27% off the top of my head. I was looking. But he actually had the highest 3-point rate on the team, meaning the shots he took, the percentage of which were 3-pointers, he led the team, which I actually like. Like, again, there is value in people being willing to take shots. And I think if he starts hitting those, he's going to space the court. And he's a 6'4", 210-ish pound kid. Like, he's got some ruggedness where he can absolutely play threes against some teams.
Right.
Neath, I don't know. I don't want to be overly critical. I feel like I just don't know where the best spot for him is because he's another guy who doesn't shoot well. He doesn't create.
I completely agree there. He's the puzzle piece that just makes the least amount of sense in terms of how it fits, but he does enough things well that you have to justify minutes for him. He might be able to be a difference maker, but I agree. He's the most confusing fit of the group, especially as we've watched some other players, start to emerge a little bit.
You know what I thought maybe his upside could be as kind of like a Khalil Iverson type. He's not that athletic. Iverson was
right. He was a freak.
He was a freak, but Neath is probably one of the 2 or 3 most. He is one of the 2 or 3 most athletic guys on the roster. He's built well. 100%. I was kind of thinking he could be a versatile defender who's athletic enough to get loose balls, create some havoc, but it didn't. And he had some injury problems too. So to be perfectly fair here, he's had a hard time staying healthy, but it just has never really fully clicked.
That's my hope for him as well. It's just going to be that utility knife off the bench that does a little bit of everything and provides a spark when he is out there.
And I agree. I think that's the upside there. Let's go to the 3. And we already talked about some of these guys moving up and down. So Neath is definitely going to be able to play some 3. Jordan Davis. A couple of the new names at the 3, though. You're talking Marcus Silver could play some 3. Carter Gilmore could play some 3. I kind of want to go here with this position so we don't just hit every single player on the roster. But is there a role for Carter Gilmore on this team, do you think?
I absolutely do. And I think that he very well might surprise people in terms of minutes played. Marcus Silver is a unique case where he might be able to play a little bit more 3 than 4, but I think that Carter Gilmore will be the backup 4. And, he's come a long way physically. I spoke with his mom during the off season just about kind of, everything he did to prepare himself more so physically for the game of basketball and, just how much more confident he is in being able to read and react to what they're doing on both ends. Now, I'm not saying he's going to come out here and be some, relied upon scorer, but I think that the good things that he did last year, I think are going to be accentuated. You're going to see more of that and more consistently against better competition. There's just there's less pause in his game right now. I think that he's going to be just about a fixture in the rotation, truthfully.
Well, I think at his best, he's probably a connector, right? He's moving the ball, hitting open shots. Now, that's something that was really a struggle for him last year. I think he can hit the open shots, but he just never put it together in a game. If he's hitting shots, he's going to play.
Yeah, if he really, in my opinion, anything he provides offensively whatsoever is an added bonus. I think he just does enough other things well, and he truly understands. He understands what he is, who he is, what his role is, and there's value in that. As long as he's playing good defense, now that he's gotten bigger physically, I think he can more so handle being able to play the 4. I think we'll see him a little bit less as a 3. I don't think he has enough quickness to be out there for long stretches playing that spot.
Right. It would have to be certain matchups for sure.
Right.
I think the 4 and 5 are pretty obvious, right? It's Wahl, it's Crowl. I want to talk about, you already mentioned you think the backup 4 could very likely be Gilmore. So let's move to the backup 5 spot, which was really one of the big questions we talked about earlier in the year. You were on the show, and it really didn't get addressed. It's still Hodges. I want to put this 2 ways. So how much better does Steven Crowl have to be this year? And then how worried are we if Chris Hodges has to kind of step up and play a larger role?
I think that Crowl needs to be quite a bit better. I really liked everything he did last year. I'll have something coming out about him hopefully this week, actually. But all of the flashes are there. He's highly skilled. Now that he's bigger and more confident, I really believe he becomes a consistent double-digit scoring threat. I mean, he wasn't even that far off last year, so I don't think that's hot take or anything. But I think that he's going to be able to gobble up over 30 minutes a game or about 30 minutes a game, which kind of gives the Badgers the flexibility to go small if they want. I mean, Greg already talked about in his preseason press conference, being more multiple, playing positionless, playing smaller, which could mean Wahl slides down. They have Gilmore, maybe Ilver, maybe all 3 at once. It kind of mitigates the need for another true 5 as we've traditionally used it, but we are going to need it. This is the Big Ten. And I definitely do have some concern about Chris Hodges, and I think I'm going to continue to have that until I'm proven wrong, and I'd love to be. I don't think he's ready yet. Physically, he's strong. He's a little bit imposing. He's got good length. Somebody I think could move people down low, but his offensive game is so raw that I don't know what he can give you unless it's just effort on the offensive glass and putbacks, which has value, of course. But
it also, to that point, though, it also really impacts. And this is the same point we talked about earlier with Johnny Davis leaving, right? If you suddenly have a kind of a black hole in offense, it just impacts everybody else. It just constricts the court when you have somebody who can't score and isn't skilled, and it makes it harder.
I think offensively, his role is really puzzling. I know they wouldn't be counting on him for much more than a breather for Steven, but just, I don't know. His game is pretty raw. I have to see it first.
The other thing with Crowl that I think he needs to get better. He was 5th on the team in rebounding rate last year. Basically, the percentages of rebounds that he grabbed, it was 9.9%. And with Johnny Davis taking his 8.2 defensive rebounds a game, which is still an incredible number to me as a shooting guard, he's going to have to be better on the glass. Him and Wahl are going to have to pick up some of that slack.
I think that's largely accurate, but the way that the Badgers actually teach their defense, and not to plug again, but there will be an article coming out this week again, explaining the defensive system, the ins and outs, and the videos explaining, what the rules are, how they do them. It's actually not designed for the bigs to get the rebounds. It is designed for them to just create space for everyone else to gang rebound. And that kind of means the wings and the guards are the ones that are intended to go get them. Obviously, if they box out their man, they'll go get it, but the bigs are not relied upon in their defensive system, I guess, to rebound. I do think he'll fall into more just by being bigger.
Right. And that kind of ties into the Badgers' traditional transition philosophy as well, right? They do team rebound more, which means they don't run as much, even though we saw more tempo last year. It all kind of ties together when people say, we need to get out and run more. Well, you're always sacrificing something in basketball. If you want to run and release more, you're sacrificing on the defensive or offensive end on the glass. I want to finish here. So we kind of went through the rotation. I think that was awesome. Your starting 5, I think we kind of talked about, but let's just put it on the paper. You think it, obviously we know it's going to be Hepburn. We think it's going to be Klesmit. At the 3, you had Davis?
Right now, I think it will be Jordan Davis. I do think there's an outside chance, depending on matchups, that Marcus Silver could find his way into the starting 3 spot. This is not something I'm expecting, but I have heard from some people that I that I trust, that he has gotten a decent amount of spin with the ones.
And then at the 4, obviously Wahl, 5 Crowl. How many of the rotation, how many of the second guys are going to see consistent minutes in your opinion? How deep does this rotation go after the first couple games? Because the first couple games are always kind of wonky, but when we settle into Big Ten play, how deep is this rotation?
Yeah, as you said early on, I think we're going to see almost 11 guys seeing the floor, and it's going to have to be, until someone separates themselves. But even Greg said he acknowledged as much in his preseason press conference that he knows that he can't play that consistently. He has to whittle it down. And I think at times last year, our rotation was too long. And I think, to our detriment. Yeah. And I think you do need to tighten it up. Sam Decker actually kind of voiced his opinion about this as well, saying, 8 is really the perfect number. I think Wisconsin settles in more around 9. But I guess right now it's damn near impossible to pick who those might be, which I think is both exciting and concerning. It's Wisconsin basketball. It's a new year. There's a lot of uncertainty, and we're projected to get 9th again.
Yeah, just similar to last year.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I think 8 or 9 is. I think 9 is probably the number, right? I think so. I think you're going to see. I don't know though. It is really interesting. I see
it being very matchup dependent, and Greg has shown a willingness over the years to change his starting lineups or his rotations simply based on what they have to offer, less than what we want to impose.
Yeah, I think he's become, and honestly, I think he's become more flexible the last couple of years, which I think 100%. Is awesome. I have a question about that for you in our last segment coming up. I want to ping you on something and then get any of your final thoughts as we wrap up the show. Again, Dillon Graff is awesome. I'm already keeping him longer than I should, but we're going to try to keep him for one more segment. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar, our friends at Built Bar. It's one of my favorite snacks. It's something that I keep in my drawer. My kids rate it. I hide some. They occasionally send me like a sample pack because they're a sponsor, which is incredible. Everything they do is 100% real chocolate, lots of protein, 160 calories or less. They do this new one. It's a cookie dough chunk puffs, which is essentially just like cookie dough with chocolate, protein, and not a lot of calories. It's absolutely incredible. And it's good to have a healthy snack that you can turn to if we're trying to look a little bit more like Dillon, trying to get a little more healthy. Built Bar is a way for us to help get that healthy nutrition, the healthy protein that our bodies need. Easy snack. So run to built.com, snag a box for you and your family. It's the perfect treat. And we have a great offer for you. Go to built.com, promo code LOCKED15, LOCKEDON15, and you get 15% off your order. Promo code locked on 15. I want to thank everyone again for tuning into Locked on Badgers basketball preview. Really excited for the season. And we're going to get Dillon on one more segment quick. I just want to kind of wrap up big picture stuff. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and I just want your take on it because it low-key kind of drives me nuts. And I really like what we've seen from Greg Gard the last couple of years. Quite frankly, I think he's an upper echelon Big Ten coach. I think I love next year's recruiting class that we're bringing in. I think we did a great job there. There's a bug flying over your camera, by the way. That was awesome. So I love what we're doing here. I love Greg Gard. I wish he would be a little more flexible defensively. I wish he would have a little bit more of a zone in his back pocket, a little more junk defenses. I don't know why we don't utilize it a little bit more, have it in the back pocket. I'm just curious on your take here.
So I agree. I actually think that despite what a lot of people truly have believed over the years, I think he's been pretty good at, adjusting with the times a little bit and, making some concessions in the way he's done things over the years. To your point, defensively, why I think he's not flexible is because of Bo Ryan. And Bo Ryan was his old saying was, if it didn't work in a game, we don't need to make adjustments. We need to do those things better. And they would just go and do it again and again and again until they perfected it. And I think Greg Gard's very much that same school. I actually own his DVD explaining his defensive system, the pressure, pinch, and protect. I recommend it to everybody, but
can I just say, low-key, I have that DVD as well, by the way.
Terrific. Yeah, he believes it wholeheartedly, and I think at its core it works. I agree, though. Even just a couple possessions a game to throw those different looks. I mean, it's only a 30-second shot clock. If you come down knowing you're going to have man defense, and then all of a sudden you see a 2-3 zone, a 1-3-1, it eats away. Odds are they're going to have a poor possession. I think a couple of those would go a long way.
I agree. Is there any chance you think we see that? And just really quick, another Bo Ryan quote where he said, I tried man once and it didn't work. Or zone once and it didn't work. So we never did it again. And I'm just like, first of all, he's a Hall of Fame coach. He won national titles. He knows way more about basketball than I've ever known. But like I'm watching the Warriors in the NBA and they go to zone in an NBA playoff game for 2 possessions to throw off, and it's like, it's a change up, well,
that's exactly it,
man.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And to answer your question, I feel confident without giving away I feel confident you'll see some different things.
Interesting.
Not a lot,
okay.
Not a lot, but I think you'll see some.
Interesting. And that's the thing. I don't want a lot, right? Like you can be a great man team and run that predominantly and be a really successful program. We've seen it. I want to go here. I have a couple quick questions and I want to just then kick it to you if you have any final thoughts, anything that, maybe you didn't think that we covered. I definitely want this to be collaborative. One of my biggest questions on this team is the shooting question, right? Do you think that this team has done enough in the offseason? Do you think we talked about it? I think it's a big deal with Johnny Davis not creating as much gravity and not creating as many easy looks. Last year, his team was a bad shooting team with a lot of shots that Johnny Davis created that were pretty open. Like, is this going to be a good shooting team?
I will shoot myself in the foot if I'm wrong, but I think they will be. I mean, in the second half of the season last year, Chucky Hepburn shot 40%. And I mean, we've seen Tyler Wahl make, improvements, which I'm not expecting him to be a 3-point shooter, but if he could shoot above 16%, I think that would go a long way. Steven Crowl, I believe, is a better shooter than he was last year. I think he was a little bit timid. I don't think we'll see that this year. Klesmit is going to go get his buckets. He's going to be a confident shooter. If Essegian has minutes, he is going to be a threat from beyond the arc. Jordan Davis, there are enough shooters on this roster. I think that they're going to be a lot more reliant on the 3 this year than even last year and in most years because they don't have as many playmakers on the roster. I think they're going to rely on it, and I do think they're going to be quite a bit improved. I wouldn't say that I expect them to be great. They're going to do what they do offensively, but I do think that they're going to be a decent amount better.
All right, last question for me, and then I'm going to kick it to you if you have anything else. I've already kept you for longer than I should. The Badgers are finished to pick anywhere between 8th, 9th, 10th in the Big Ten Conference, depending on where you look. Give me one quick reason why they exceed that and one quick reason why maybe they don't exceed that.
I do think that they are going to do better than 9th place. I think that they're going to be pushing for a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. I have question marks that I'll need to answer before I can completely double down on that. But I think they have too many really, really solid players that are going to log a lot of the minutes. A lot of our questions are coming from smaller roles, which I think can be masked in different ways if they don't work. But the guys who are going to be expected to play 30 minutes a night, I feel really good about. And so for those reasons, I think that they're going to exceed a 9th place finish. And for them to do worse than that, realistically, I don't see it happening without injury, but I would say it would have to be, again, a sub 300 3-point shooting team. And Chris Hodges would have to be very clearly not ready and then just get bullied down low because they don't have enough size otherwise.
I kind of think if you had another sub 300 shooting team without the ISO scoring of Johnny Davis, that might do it by itself.
It very well could. I think Chucky will get to the line a fair amount more in the second half. I rewatched all of the games, during the offseason, and in the second half of the year, more specifically, Chucky grew immensely as a playmaker and as a creator. And there were times when there was nothing there, and he showed it was only once or twice a game he would show these flashes, but he has this playmaking ability that he didn't have to utilize last year. And so I am confident we'll be able to get more free throws out of him. Nothing like we had with Johnny. I mean, that was exceptional.
Anything final from you? Like I said, I've already kept you for way too long. Any last thoughts?
Greg Gard is a good coach. I'm tired
Agreed.
of people. I'm tired of the slander. I mean, he's won 2 of the last 3 Big Ten championships, going for 3 of 4. If you're not happy with Greg Gard at this point, I'm not really sure what more you're looking for.
Yeah, your standards are probably way too high. I agree 100%. He's a really good coach, and he's proven it over his tenure at Wisconsin. He is Dillon Graff. Just again, a super insightful follow, super insightful Badger writer. We're gonna put all of his content up, all the places you can find him. So I highly encourage you to follow him, check him out. You'll be a smarter Badger fan because of it. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We're gonna continue to have more and more basketball coverage. Occasionally we will work to get Dillon back on the show. He's got a bunch going on as well, but we'll definitely at points try to get him back on Wisconsin. Talk to you tomorrow. We got a Michigan State crossover for the football game this weekend coming up.